we've got Cassandra with me helping out. So Cassandra's advancing the slides here. Thanks, Cassandra. And this is hosted by our 3 volunteer centers, Volunteer Toronto, Volunteer Markham, and Volunteer BC. And so we'll start with the land acknowledgement. So as we convene digitally today, we do so on the land and traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, home now to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We are proud to promote the spirit of helping, sharing, and caring for our neighbors without expectation, a value that was first and continues to be exemplified by each of these nations as the first peoples of this land. In that tradition, we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and build community on this land. And it's our collective responsibility. As Toronto is a part of the Dish with One Spoon, a pre-colonial agreement, everyone sitting around the dish has a responsibility to take only what you need before you pass it along to the next person. Knowing you need to leave enough in the dish, everyone has a collective responsibility to share equally so our neighbors have what they need, but also so the next generation has what they need. We're all part of an agreement that predates all the other contracts you might currently be in, predates the city, the country, before any European foot stepped on this land. We all have the collective responsibility to decide how we care for, share, and use the land. We may not be able to reverse the artificial idea of land ownership, but we can decide and take action on how we use that land today. So it is a cause for reflection and making a commitment. How have you and I personally given back to Indigenous peoples, connected with the land, and protected the water? So we leave it that reflection as we get started into our session today. So our session is hosted by 3 volunteer centers. Volunteer MBC, Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon, serves Peel Region, fuels purposeful connections to respond to the most pressing social issues in our community. Volunteer Markham, serving Markham, provides Markham residents and volunteer organizations with leadership and resources to promote volunteerism and enrich the lives of those in their community. And Volunteer Toronto. Volunteer Toronto increases the positive impact that volunteering has on the city of Toronto through innovative initiatives that inspire, inform, and connect volunteers and the organizations that need them. So thank you all for taking some time to be with us here today. I'm going to just share a little bit of our topic here and sort of ground us with these words by Alma Powell. When young people discover they can be agents of change, wonderful things happen. They start to serve in the neighborhoods, learn about public issues, create innovative solutions to tough public challenges, and eventually become the voters, community project builders, and leaders in our communities and nation. So our agenda. So we're going to be starting off with a panel discussion. I'm going to introduce our panelists in a moment. We're going to get insight on the Playbook, and that's going to be a really exciting resource. And then we will get into our Q&A and open forum discussion where I'm sure we're going to look forward to a lot of great questions and comments from each of you. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So now our first panelist, Javier Diaz, is with Nutmeg Soccer. Nutmeg Soccer was created in 2015 with a mission to provide free, fun, safe, and quality soccer training and educational sessions for underserved children and youth in Toronto while providing development opportunities for volunteers. Javier immigrated from Mexico to Canada in 2007 and along with his soccer friends identified soccer as a tool to integrate to the community, in particular for immigrants. In 2015, Javier and his co-founders launched Nutmeg Soccer in response to the need of underserved families to provide recreational activities for their children in Toronto. And he serves on the board of Nutmeg and works as a researcher at the University Health Network investigating cancer biology. Welcome, Javier.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, and then we also have from Rotary Club of Mississauga Malton, we have Gaia. Rotary Club is one of 9 highly active Rotary clubs in Mississauga. Rotarians volunteer their time to make a difference in our communities and the world through local international service projects and more. Gaia Nagendra is the Director of Programs and Community Engagement for Rotary Club Mississauga Malton. She's a community service worker for 16 years, came from a background of working in the business field. Currently, she's a founding member and executive director of Peel Tamil Service Providers Network's Information Helpline also, and has a vast background and is connected with us at Volunteer MBC and Peel. And welcome, Gaia. And we also have—
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Gaia. And then we also have Dalton from Youth Assisting Youth, which helps at-risk newcomer children and youth find their way by pairing them with older youth mentors who can offer support and guidance. Their goal is to help children in the community feel more confident in themselves, achieve their personal and academic goals, and to create lifelong friendships. And so Dalton is one of the volunteer recruitment coordinators with Youth Assisting Youth, and he's passionate about supporting people in their learning and personal growth, hopes to use his background in community engagement and education to create positive social change. His goal is to inspire youth to become the leaders of tomorrow. Welcome, Dalton.
Thank you for having me.
And from Young People's Theatre, we have Ryan Singh. So Young People's Theatre is Toronto's oldest professional theatre company and a national producer and presenter of theatre for young audiences, the first in North America and the largest of its kind in Canada. And Ryan himself is an educator, activist, artist, and organizer who has managed volunteers for over 15 years. A BA in sexuality studies and MA in gender, feminist, and women's studies from York University, and most recently works on political campaigns and as a DEI educator. And he also has a diploma in community work from George Brown College. Welcome, Ryan.
Nice to be here, thank you.
And last but not least, we have Cheryl from CICS. CICS was established in 1968, a long time, with a vision to empower immigrants in settling and integrating as contributing members of Canadian society through diverse, professional, innovative sciences. Their mission is to enable immigrants to fully integrate, participate, and contribute in all spheres of Canadian society. And Cheryl is very passionate about volunteering herself, and also passionate about engaging newcomers and immigrants looking to acquire skills for personal and professional development and growth, and hopes to inspire others to give when they're able to through their own joy in volunteering. So those are concise as I could make it, bios for these wonderful panelists that we have today. We're going to be offering a lot of great insight. And so we're going to get right into our panel discussion. We're going to turn off the screen share for the moment so that you don't have to worry about that, so we can see our panelists. And we're going to dive into the discussion here. So welcome everybody, and thanks for being here. And we're going to have a great little discussion here and get some insights. So first of all, I'm going to kind of pose this question out to Javier. So prior to the pandemic, in what ways did you engage youth as volunteers? So let us know a little bit about what was happening before the start of the pandemic, Javier.
Thank you. As you mentioned, Nutmeg Soccer provides free soccer for children. Our organization is run 100% by volunteers. And that means we were engaging volunteer roles of all sorts, starting from soccer coaches, of course, which usually are soccer players. They don't have to have coaching credentials, but we will train them afterwards. That was probably the first year or two of Nutmeg. We were really just needing soccer coaches, and essentially myself and one of my co-founders were doing all the administration aspects of the organization. But quickly after the first year, we started to need more and more backstage volunteers, including graphic designers, program coordinators, people who were reaching out to potential partners, and then funding. We were also needing people who will write the grants for us, etc. So as our organization started to grow, we started to include more and more backstage roles into the organization. One of the latest programs that we created, and it happened just before the pandemic. We are still very excited about it. It's a program for children. We serve children from 6 to 12-year-old. But then after 12, a lot of children don't have more recreational opportunities. They start for young people, about 16, 18. So we have that gap between 12 and 16 for children. So what we started to do is to create a program that we call Junior Coaches. So we engage the children who are graduating from our younger programs to become junior coaches, to teach what they learn at Nutmeg in terms of soccer, but not only soccer. We really use soccer just as a tool to engage the community, to motivate them to have a healthy lifestyle and learn leadership, teamwork, etc. So we were creating this particular, for the conversation of today, this program for young people. So those are kind of the roles that we were looking in volunteers, coaches, and backstage roles.
Cool. Thank you, Javier. So I pose that same question over to Gaia. What was happening prior to the pandemic, and in terms of how you were engaging youth volunteers?
Prior to the pandemic, my youth volunteers were mostly involved with the coding program for girls. We ran a technology program to encourage women to be involved in technology and career options for tech. So we had a partnership partnership with Microsoft before the pandemic, and my volunteers were coming to teach at the Microsoft location for the coding program. They were youth from ages 15 to about I think my oldest youth volunteer was about 27. I don't know if he's considered a youth, but he was one of the young people that were there. So part of that, they were teaching in the youth, like our youth coding programs, and we had that going on with the mentorship with the girls and all that stuff. And then after COVID hit, we had to get everybody retrained again to do the online formatting. So now we are running our coding programs where the youth are engaged, and they're teaching younger girls on how to do coding, but my volunteers are high school teachers that are, that are doing online coding programs.
Okay, so quite a pivot there. Yeah. So I'll provide that same question over to Dalton. Dalton, tell us a little bit about Youth Assisting Youth and how things were going prior to COVID-19.
Sure. So as was kind of mentioned before, the main program we did was asking our volunteers to go out into the community, spend one-on-one time with young kids, doing activities like sports, video games, watching movies, or just talking to them about life. And we also offered a bunch of different in-person activities at events. We would ask them to come to bowling nights. We would offer free sports tickets. We would take them to places like Sky Zone, Wonderland. We had summer camp. So all sorts of different events that our clientele didn't normally have access to. We work with a lot of low-income families. So getting to come to these events was a real special event for them. And also just to support our volunteers, we did our in-person trainings and in-home assessments just to make sure that they were a good fit to be a mentor, that their home was a safe environment. And we also did some group workshops for our girls empowerment program, teaching them different life skills, having guest speakers and other things to help youth feel empowered.
Right. A lot of engagement with the community, a lot of interacting, something that we miss now. Maybe we all know we took it a little for granted. Great. Thanks. So Ryan, can you also comment on how things were there and at the Young People's Theater?
For sure. One of the biggest ones that's not there presently is we had youth volunteers working in guest services support. So they worked with our front of house staff and would support ushering shows, dealing with patrons, helping them find their way around the theater, that kind of thing that people usually do when they're guests. They also, the biggest role, and this is still true for YPT volunteers, is they work with our drama school as drama school teaching support. So we have a series of classes, and previously, of course, we had more, and in 4 locations. Now they're, well, everywhere because everyone's at home. But previously we had 4 locations, and people would go out to classes, and mostly on weekends they would work with a drama school teacher with a variety of grades, and in certain specialty classes like Shakespeare monologues, actor's craft, audition technique, stuff like that. And then we have a series of placement and or co-op students that are generally youth. The co-op students, of course, are high school, and placement students come from colleges and universities. Some of them are youth, and some of them might not count as youth anymore. I think someone was mentioning, I don't know if 27 is youth anymore, and I remember when I felt like I aged out of being considered a youth. It's a hard day for a lot of us.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And we know that a lot of the attendees today have different definitions from their organization of what they're considering as youth. And I think over the years, the sector has realized that needs to be a sort of flexible thing, because based on the needs and the communities, there are different things. But definitely, I know some definitions 19 to 30 for early adolescent to youth or young adults. So we definitely want to be able to engage with many of them, and that's great work that was happening there. So finally to Cheryl, tell us a little bit in sort of engaging with immigrants and newcomers, what that meant in terms of how you were engaging youth as volunteers at your organization.
For sure. So prior to the pandemic, we had 8 service locations operating. And so there was obviously a lot of room for our youth volunteers to be engaged in those locations. We actually have a youth-specific center called the Immigrant Youth Center, which had a variety of events and programs. So a lot of our youth participants end up becoming volunteers. And so it's kind of like they kind of become like a senior volunteer, and they can kind of usher in and become mentors for youth participants. It was a really cool system. So they would help out as program assistants, front desk reception support, as some of the other panelists have mentioned. We did a lot of event planning and advocacy committees, mentorship and homework helpers. We had a lot of external events and opportunities with community partners, where they would volunteer at charity events like community runs, fundraisers, volunteering at senior centers, park cleanups. There were also larger volunteer opportunities with external partners with about 10 to 30 volunteers participating, so in person. So obviously all that has been impacted, but prior to that, our youth volunteers were pretty significant to our volunteer base, making up about 36% of the base, and that's still about like 222 volunteers in the year. But yeah, so that's what everything was like before the pandemic.
So yeah, tell us how then things changed for the organization during the pandemic. You know, we started in sort of toward the end of March, and now we're in November. So what are you currently doing in terms of engaging youth volunteers? What has been the impact, and what are you how have you pivoted?
Yeah, so since the pandemic started, I had to communicate with both of our youth teams. So we have youth teams in the York Region area as well as the Scarborough area, because those are our two service locations, service cities, I guess. And so we had a lot of chats about how we can continue engaging youth volunteers, because almost immediately we were getting emails from all over the place from youth volunteers being like, how can I get my high school hours completed? How can I continue volunteering now that, you know, we used to have a drop-in basketball program, like that's obviously not happening anymore, and all the other in-person opportunities were, you know, cut short. So we had to really kind of scramble and think about how we could continue engaging our volunteers. And not gonna lie, it was pretty difficult. We did notice a drop in our volunteer engagement from like 36% initially to 28% of the volunteer base now. So what we've been trying to do is kind of move everything virtually and kind of try to make these volunteer opportunities meaningful. So we have come up with the mental health ambassadors. So we have volunteers kind of be a mental health council and focus a lot on the mental health piece, because that's been very important and prevalent, especially this past year. And we're lucky that we do have a garden program. So we were able to engage some of the volunteers in person. And we also have a food bank program. So we had a lot of youth volunteers helping out in the summer. Obviously PPE and everything was observed and social distancing, but it's still a challenge now that everything's, you know, back to the lockdown, and all the opportunities are slowly going away in terms of like in-person opportunities. So we're struggling a little bit.
Right, and we have a cross section on the panel of different types of organizations and different subsectors here, but I definitely can feel for people who are newcomers and immigrants. They, you know, come to Canada trying to, and then, you know, if they're, you know, they're faced by something new for everyone, and sort of that's something where it's challenging enough to kind of deal with, oh, I'm going to deal with employment, or I'm going to deal with this and that, and then for the youth specifically, what you mentioned, you know, they're told, yeah, you have to go to high school and you complete 40 hours of volunteering, and they're like, wait, how? And you don't even have a clear answer on how to do that. So I think this is something we're definitely seeing from the volunteer center side. So Ryan, tell us a little bit about how your organization at the youth assisting, at the theater, Young People's Theater, has pivoted.
Yeah, a fun thing that took place or that was going on when we decided to shut down operations partially because of the pandemic was I was 3 weeks into the job. So we were doing a lot of things on the fly, which is, you know, very doable, and it's something I'm used to in much smaller organizations, but it's an interesting wrinkle, I would say. So we canceled our spring drama school, which would have been running for, just as this hit, just after March break. basically. And we switched for our summer camps to online drama school, which were really successful, and we were really pleased about that. But similarly to Cheryl, we noticed a reduced set of volunteer engagement, and also we just had to reduce the number of classes. And then again for fall, we're running online drama school, and we will be doing so again in the winter. The biggest thing that completely gets eliminated is our guest services support programming, GSS, because there's nobody in the building. And then there's smaller things that have had to be adjusted. So for example, I'm in the theater this week because we're creating a play in a box that we're going to be, you can send out to families or you can come pick up. And we're assembling the boxes this week, and I was going to be getting in volunteers, but with the rising cases, we had to make a call to have fewer people in the building. And that was before the lockdown even came. So those kinds of shifts and kind of having to readjust ourselves have made this pretty interesting. Yes, I see there's a comment from Julia about an interesting concept. If anyone would like to message me about it afterwards, I won't advertise at this panel, but
no, I think no, I think people want to learn. Partly what I take from this is many people would seem to think, or just to take it as a de facto truth that, well, how are you going to do drama programming virtually, that you're going to, it's highly interactive, you need to be there, you need to engage youth, there's no way to create, so just to be able to bring that programming out in a short turnaround time to make it virtual, work with what you have. I think that's something that it challenges us all to think, okay, within our own organization, maybe there's more we can do than we think we can do. And that's those insights that are useful. And as far as organizations that have come up with ways, absolutely, we'd love for all of our panelists to be able to share that with our organizations here. So that's fantastic. Thanks. And Dalton, sure, please.
Sorry, I will say it's a testament to our volunteers that they were able to adjust to online schooling that quickly. And sort of, again, primarily our drama school volunteers are high school age students, so they have to be 14, and most of them are 14 to 17. And their ability to shift to doing things like you're describing over Zoom is, it's a testament to their hard work and their dedication. So
yeah,
really
I certainly hear that, and I think just that many youth are highly adaptable. I'm not going to underplay the impact that COVID is having on everyone, especially our youth, but their adaptability is something that all adults can aspire to. So Dalton, do you want to talk a little bit about how Youth Assisting Youth has sort of modified its programming and how it's sort of helped engage youth volunteers during the pandemic in a different way?
Absolutely. So pretty much all of our programming had to be shifted online. We asked our mentors to, instead of going out into the community, they could spend a couple hours a week on FaceTime or Skype, streaming videos or just chatting with their mentee. For our in-person events, we obviously couldn't do things like going to Raptors game, Blue Jays games, bowling nights, anything like that. But we did start doing Kahoot trivia nights. We organized some cooking classes that our staff were hosting. We would go out and deliver the food to people so that they could make the recipes. We've had movie nights, dance classes, and a lot of other really cool virtual events to show that, we still want to keep this community going. We want to make people feel that they're connected with one another. The main challenge has been that, not all people feel comfortable with the online format. They'd prefer to wait until in-person interaction is okay again, or they may not have access to the technology or to internet to be able to participate in these activities. And on the flip side, we've had an amazing amount of people who have said, can we please, we want to help out. I want to give back during this time. And we're so grateful for that. But because we're not getting as many people, as many families wanting to engage, there hasn't been as much for them to do. So we had to come up with some new opportunities.
Dalton, I'm getting you.
Oh, hello.
Sorry, we're just experiencing a little choppiness here on my end here. So let's, sorry, could you just repeat that last sentence there?
Sure. Oh, what I was saying is, we had just an amazing amount of volunteers who wanted to give back, and with the amount of people saying, you know, we want to wait until in person is okay, and volunteers coming forward, it was hard to keep volunteers engaged and to give them things to do. So we had to get creative and come up with some new programs. We started a new tutoring program to have our volunteers helping kids with their academic goals. We launched a boys empowerment program, all of which have been very, very popular. A lot of people have wanted to participate in that as well. And it's not only helped our clients, but also our volunteers to have something to do while we're waiting to get them matched up with their mentee in the community.
That's an incredible amount of programming, and I think what you just said, it's also for the benefit of the volunteers. In many organizations where volunteers have had to be kind of deactivated for the time being, we know as volunteer centers, we know as a community, the volunteering itself is a therapy. It's a method of being engaged and involved and having a sense of purpose, and that and a sense of control. And when it's taken from us, we definitely are missing that. So I think providing ways for people to engage is really important. So that's very helpful, Dalton. And Gaia, tell us, you were mentioning a little bit earlier, you want to just expand a little bit on how the Rotary has managed to kind of deliver its coding program and its other programs during the pandemic?
Yeah, Sean, so during the pandemic, what we have done is invested more into our technical resources. So we've kind of found a way to do everything online, and we've asked our clients and our volunteers to get trained in Zoom, Google Meet, Hangout, Microsoft Team Meets, and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of provided those resources to our clients, which were mostly seniors, and our volunteers, which was for high school youth. So they all been trained on those aspects of technical issues and how to navigate through the online virtual platform. And also for myself, I had to take a training as well. So that has been done. So everything going forward for the next year, I think before we open up the public to have in-person programming, we will do everything virtual till probably a vaccine would come out, and I can if the vaccine is coming out, I can have my seniors come into my day program and I can have the volunteers engaged in that way. But as for the time being, my executive board and our other members have decided it is best as a director of program and community engagement to keep my programs virtual. So that way I am trying to get more ideas to develop more programming. So I'll have placement students working with me in January and at the moment right now to develop more programs. Yeah, so as soon as the vaccine comes out, we'll be back into in-person programming. But for the time being, we are taking a halt on that and making everything virtual.
That's everybody's hoping for that to turn around, but I definitely think that you've taken some wise steps, both what you mentioned around the training, and I think all of us have benefited and learned a lot during the pandemic about what we can and and how to do it, and then also just simply trying to adapt and continue to deliver programs. That's great. And Javier, I'm very interested to hear your answer to this, because being a sports athletic organization, a team sport, tell us a little bit about how you've been able to continue to engage volunteers, or have you been able to? What has changed for Nutmeg?
Thank you. Yeah, definitely everything has changed for us because our programming, of course, requires children and coaches to be together. So we've been evolving during these months. The first couple of months, we were just waiting to see what was happening. Then I think the third month, we started creating online content like soccer videos from our coaches to teach children to do soccer drills at home, because at that time they couldn't even go to a park to play at some point. And there was some engagement, but I have to be honest that at that time, we always ask parents what they think about the programming that we're providing. And at that time they were like, we have so many online courses now, like children are taking classes online, and they are tired of being in front of the computer. So there wasn't a lot of engagement with online activities. Our volunteers, though, were super enthusiastic. They wanted to create more and more content. And I think it was good for us as managers of the organization to keep volunteers engaged. Although from a strategic point of view, it wasn't probably the best use of our volunteers' time. It was good for us to keep them engaged, but we started to look for other options. And the problem with us is that, for example, we rely a lot on the Toronto District School Board facilities because they are lower cost. Our programs are completely free for children and their families. So we need to get access to those type of facilities. But because they are not renting them, we are still not able to provide programming. So we've been thinking about, at the end of the day, what we want to provide is physical literacy, not necessarily soccer only. So we've been thinking about moving towards maybe yoga or something where physical distancing can be better controlled than soccer. And all these ideas have been brought to the table by our volunteers. As I mentioned, we are 100% run by volunteers. So I would say right now, the role of our volunteers, including the ones who sit in our board, is more kind of strategic planning. What are we going to do from now? Because even if we have a vaccine, it might take some time to reach out children, and the guidelines from the authorities are not always clear. So I will say all our volunteers are engaged now, the ones who are engaged now are more in an overseeing aspect of it, rather than, of course, providing soccer. Right. And others took the role, for example, to plan what will be in our marketing strategy. Because by the time that we go back to the soccer fields or to the gyms, a lot of our former participants might have even moved somewhere else, so they might not be in contact with us anymore. So we will need to do very, very strong marketing. And fortunately, we have in our board, we have some people who are willing to do that marketing strategy for us. So we have tried to look for next steps. Yeah, but
wonderful.
It's still not completely.
I've heard some good things already, like in terms of folks here in the panel engaging practicum students, who you just mentioned about marketing, that strategic thinking really becoming more of it. And I'd like to hear from the panel a little bit about what they're anticipating, just like you said, Javier, around the next few months. So Gaia, what do you think the next few months look like at the Rotary in order to kind of continue within the next between now and the spring?
For me, for the next few months, my goal is to train my practicum students in the work of social work already. So I've taken opportunities to have students come in from various colleges to do placement. So they're on term placements for 6 months at a time, and I take cohorts, 2 to 3 students for each cohort. So from that point of view, I am going to be now doing every placement student that I get. I'm going to be working online remotely, and we're going to be working every day face-to-face on Zoom or Team or Microsoft Team or Google Meets to discuss what we're doing the day, planning the day, and plus I will be doing external training in the different areas of social work in like mental health and group facilitation skills and how to navigate the virtual platform, and plus coming up with new ideas and how to engage with the clients that we work with so far. And but that's the next goal for the next year or so from Rotary, till we have some kind of concrete plan from the region or the government to say that we can open up again and have in-person program. But hopefully that's a plan for now until probably 2022. If they roll out a vaccine as soon as possible and people get vaccinated, and seniors are first.
It's definitely tough to be speculating and hoping, and you're thinking about the timetable and trying to plan, and with so much uncertainty, and we know that organizations are facing that, but still continuing to do some things, and I think that's important. And I'd like to also ask Dalton similarly, like where are you and your organization in terms of the timetable the next few months? What's your focus area?
Well, first, I was just looking through the chat, and I noticed a comment from when I was cutting out. Someone said they could hear Kevin Jonas perfectly, and I love that. I know that that's me. I've gotten that for over a decade, so thank you. Very funny. So in terms of where I see things going, I see a lot of emails, Zoom meetings, a lot of different online events continuing to happen. I think we really managed to strike gold with like the amount of programming we've been able to do. It's been very well received. A lot of people want to engage with it. And in terms of recruitment, I think really putting in more effort into the online recruitment portion. What else can we be doing to reach a wider audience? What can we be doing to really enhance our brand on social media? Because we've seen a huge increase of people wanting to volunteer through that sort of marketing. But one challenge I do see is engagement or is capacity and how that'll affect engagement. So do we have the capacity to engage with the amount of people who want to volunteer? I had mentioned that we started new programs like the tutoring program, but those had gotten, people had wanted to participate very quickly, and we only have so many people on our staff that can manage all these volunteers, only so many people that we can match them with. So does that mean creating new programs? Possibly. Do we have the resources and the funds to be able to do that? But other ideas that we have are thinking about, are there different workshops that we can be doing? Other ways that we can help these volunteers build their skills to make sure that they still feel like they're getting something from our programs, even if they're still waiting to be matched up, while also working tirelessly to make sure those matches do happen.
Right, and especially in a mentorship environment where you're typically looking for skilled volunteers to begin with, people who have a certain repertoire and character traits. I think going back into the work of reinforcing their skills and training and supporting them, they'll appreciate that, because that's why they're there in the first place. So that's a great way to go. I do want to ask the panel about specific things folks are doing to enhance, and we've heard some really good ideas so far. So Ryan, do you want to simply jump in on that and share a little bit about what strategies you kind of employed, and also where things are?
I think, yeah, something that went really well was, as I mentioned before, virtual drama school. Specific strategies involved just me working really closely with other staff to continue to ensure that programming is functioning in a way that supports our volunteers and placement students. Because we're not doing an onstage season, we pushed a lot of, we're doing a lot of play development, which means we're doing a lot of stage readings, but still require some engagement. But we also have an opportunity to create curriculum connections, which our education manager and our community partnerships manager, community programs manager, excuse me, work on, whether with schools for the former or with community organizations for the latter. So I get an opportunity to, my position, I'm the community volunteer coordinator, and that can be very independent of all other aspects. And this has allowed me to work more closely with them, but also to strategize with colleges and high school co-op teachers to figure out how we can make this work. Someone earlier mentioned people being exhausted, like students being exhausted by being on Zoom all day. And something that exists is that Zoom fatigue. And so how do we work around that to get people working and doing projects that we need accomplished without consistently putting them through being on a screen and chatting with us. And I amazingly have found, again, like as an elder millennial who I have a ton of friends who don't understand phone calls and don't use the phone, we're all finding that phone calls are becoming really, really beneficial because you don't have to use a screen. You can just sit and kick back a little and chat. So
that's a great point. And Cheryl, if you want to just chime in on any specific things that you've been doing that you think are supporting your ability to still engage youth as volunteers and run your programs in the next few months.
Yeah, definitely. So based on what we have been rolling out since the pandemic happened, we realized there was a lot of programs that volunteers enjoyed, supporting. So we're going to continue our mental health ambassador program. I know that our youth team has been working to do virtual tours, and so there's an opportunity there for volunteers to be kind of Zoom co-hosts. I know it's a lot of still digital stuff, but that is something that we have to focus on because unfortunately we're not really able to have those in-person programs. But fortunately for us, it seems a lot of our youth participants and volunteers are excited about these programs. And so I think in the coming months, we're going to be working on how we can revamp previous volunteer opportunities to better fit online platforms. And we'll also be exploring different digital media platforms and focusing on youth leadership and facilitation skills so that we can allow our volunteers to kind of come back to our programs. And so that's basically what the next few months are going to look like. I'm going to be working very closely with our youth teams to kind of reshape the volunteer job descriptions for our youth volunteers.
I'm going to switch gears here for a little bit, and we're going to get back to the panel with the Q&A shortly. So I'm going to thank everybody for the responses to those questions. We'll talk a little bit about the playbook, and I'm going to invite Amanda Wu. Amanda, we're excited to bring you into the discussion for a youth perspective. You're the co-executive director of Pledges for Change, a youth-led organization passionate about transforming the way young people engage in social impact activities. Pledges designs, develops, and discusses unique and meaningful ways for youth to give back. And Amanda's in her 5th year at Western University at an Ivy School of Business, completing a dual degree in health sciences and business. So, youth assisting youth in a different fashion. In her free time, she enjoys cooking, painting, and memorizing lyrics to Hamilton. Oh boy, I've listened to that a few times. Amanda is here today to share how youth are thinking about volunteering in this pandemic and how Pledges for Change is helping organizations think about and adapt the programs for virtual youth volunteering through their new youth virtual volunteer engagement playbook, which I will just call the Playbook for brevity. The Playbook and its dedicated webpage are launching today in collaboration with Volunteer Toronto. We'll provide more details about how you can access the Playbook. The link is there. We're going to drop it in the chat, and you can download it and access resources from it. So welcome, Amanda. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro.
Yeah, so tell us, what are the most important or relevant things that you're hearing from youth who want to volunteer or have been since the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, so in early summer, we put out a survey to our youth base and asked them kind of what got them excited about volunteering, how they felt about volunteering during COVID, and kind of what skills they were thinking about contributing. And I know I want to be aware of time, so I'll keep this short, but I guess 3 things kind of we really found within our survey was that youth really cared about impact. And one of the quotes that I pulled that I thought was really impactful was that they didn't want to be doing a task for the sake of filling a position, but they want to be working towards addressing a pressing need in the area and that they could positively influence. And I think that's what we've been hearing from our panelists today about that impact and how important that position is. Also, overwhelmingly, we saw that they looked for volunteer positions on social media and then in Instagram. So for the volunteer managers here, if that's not where you are, then maybe that's somewhere you want to be to kind of meet those youth and get that engagement. And then also they were so skilled. Like when we think of youth volunteering, we often think of tutoring, we often think of social media because we're on it all the time. But they also, when they were offering kind of what skills they could contribute to an organization, they listed graphic design, public speaking, communication, leadership, translation, and the list goes on. So there is a lot that youth, and when I say youth, I guess in the definition that Pledges for Change used for this playbook was 18 and under. So we're looking at high school.
Okay, really cool. And so tell us a little bit about this playbook and what prompted Pledges to get this started.
Yeah, so Pledges follows a more interesting operating model. So we don't do kind of yearly and annual events and things like that, but we call it a pilot model. So every season or so, there's almost a theme that we're working towards. And then this season of COVID was how can youth be engaged and volunteer during COVID. And what prompted this was we did a very quick kind of a review of looking at all of the volunteer platforms and what was being offered to youth, and noticed that there was only 17% of positions that were offered to youth in high school. And we were like, oh, how are kids going to be getting their volunteer hours if there aren't that many opportunities, and but there is so much that they can offer. So what we decided to do was, okay, let's kind of get a view of the landscape, speak to youth, look for what they're looking for in a volunteering opportunity and what they can offer, and then also look at nonprofit organizations and speak with them about, oh, what are some barriers that are preventing you from offering volunteer opportunities? What are some pain points that you've had during COVID? And seeing where we can bridge that gap. And we figured we could bridge that gap with this playbook, where we've offered tools throughout the volunteer management cycles, from developing that position description all the way to collecting feedback, because that volunteer position may not be continuous. It may be project oriented. And so that's kind of where that playbook came to be.
Okay, yeah, and I think this has been a time for every organization to sort of take stock of things, and so it's great to have that analysis that Pledges for Change has done. So, what are you hoping that folks take away from the playbook? You know, what can they gain from getting into it?
Yep. So one is kind of, we have those tools there for you. We know like this panel has shown, there's very, very, very many different types of organizations. So this almost acts as kind of a starting point, a guide for you to think about social media, think about position descriptions, think about evaluating that volunteer opportunity once it's ended. But the really key takeaway, I think, that Pledges wants you to take from this book is that case studies portion that I really love, and Ryan and the drama school is a part of that as well. And it just goes to show just how beneficial youth can be to an organization, especially during this time. The other case study we have in there is the digital receptionist from Volunteer Toronto. And what we've been hearing over and over and over again is that youth inject such creativity and such positive energy into an organization, no matter where they are. And you can, not only can they bring creativity, but you can use them creatively because they have so much capacity to be able to do things. And so I would really kind of suggest, if you haven't really thought about it, to think about how you can engage youth and create positions for youth in your organization.
Yeah, sometimes we only see the barriers, we don't see the opportunities, right? And I think that's a great. So we have some time. We're going to go into our Q&A. We have some wonderful comments and insights. And Cassandra, I know you're here, been flipping through a lot of the comments. Any ones that you wanted to share, or did you want to kind of flag anyone to chime in?
I'm going to ask, I'm going to go through the comments, but I'm going to ask if anyone wants to speak, we can unmute you. So, but I need you to raise your hand for me.
So is that hand not in your camera, but within the button there, hand raising button?
Yeah. So if you can raise your hand, if you would like to be unmuted and ask a question.
Even if you wrote a comment and you want to kind of
reiterate it, yes. I'm seeing, here we go, Robert. If you can unmute.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robert.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to curb my enthusiasm because I got a really nice surprise in the last 24 hours. There's a certain organization called Free for All Foundation in Peel Region, and they're not a large organization by any means, but they put together through, I guess, an internal sort of role matrix, the study buddy role. And you know, sometimes we miss the trees as we go through the forest, but they obviously didn't, because what happened was study buddy seemed like such common sense. They had youth from 16 on, in effect, support or be peers for students from around grade 3 right through to graduation, who needed a little bit more support with respect to switch over, as it were, to virtual teaching. And lo and behold, you know, it was almost like a sleeper. You woke up, and after the role was out for 3 weeks, only has 93 applications to the organization within Volunteer NBC's referral system.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is exemplary. It shows that the talent and the commitment are out there. We just have to identify it through adjusting the roles through our community service organizations that are being offered. And that's
Thanks,
really
Yeah.
Thanks, Robert. Dalton, did you want to just chime in on that at all? It was just from a standpoint of how as mentors, there's a lot of that peer, especially for just around schoolwork, with all the school virtualizing and the hybrid models of how to attend school. Maybe there's something that you have to offer on that.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this earlier. I think that, you know, so many schools and a lot of other agencies that are trying to do educational programming, even for us with our volunteer training and the tutoring program, I think we've done well in trying to, you know, transfer everything to an online format, whether that be Zoom or Google Hangout. And one thing that I've been thinking about is what can we do to kind of close the distance that's created when we are behind a computer screen. I think sometimes, you know, you try to engage in like certain conversations, certain activities. You may be able to read some body language with the camera, but it's not quite there. So what other ways are there to make it feel like there's no distance at all? What can we do to make this learning material, you know, a little bit more engaging? So
wonderful.
I want to just be conscious. I have some questions in our Q&A here.
Sure,
Shen, I want to throw them. Hannah has asked, what are your suggestions for keeping a wide range, age range engaged? For example, if you have youth from 10 to 18, all sitting on the same committee, advice from anyone in the panel about how you're keeping everyone engaged across that range.
Yeah, can I chime in?
Sure, go ahead, Guy.
So I kind of did this thing with the intergenerational programming. So where I paired up I have about 30 seniors that participate in my in-person day program, but we all went to the virtual platform now. What I did, I took my high school volunteers. I have about I'll probably say about 10 high school volunteers. So what I did this check-in buddy system where I had 3 or 4 high school kids check in within my group of the 30 seniors. So I would pair them up like 3 to 3 to a person, and they would do like a phone conversation or like a WhatsApp video chat just to talk to them and see how they're doing. And then after that, we meet once a week on a Friday afternoon, and we do like an intergenerational story time telling with like a tea time kind of thing. So that's been working as well.
So we're in the blitz round now, folks. So we'll get a couple more questions in here and give you about 30-second responses. But we will make sure that all the questions get to the panel and also send out some responses with our follow-up. But Cassandra, you want to share another question?
Yeah, there's another question here from Kim that asks, if you are new to your position and don't have existing relationships with local youth, how can you engage virtually? Advice, please. Amanda might have some words here.
Yeah, I can answer that really quickly in less than 30 seconds. If I don't know where you are, but if you kind of look youth council in that area, there are so many youth councils around that are made up of youth, and they usually have a pretty strong social media following. And so if you are having trouble engaging youth in your area and you're new, then I would look to them. And getting connected with them.
Awesome. Definitely a lot we can do on the social side as well with the councils. Next question, Cassandra.
That's the 2 I had in our system. If anyone else,
that's cool.
I'm not seeing any other questions.
We're just about out of time, so that's okay. I think what I do want to flag for everybody is that you know, the volunteer centers have a platform where we're sharing resources. We're going to be sharing this recording. We're going to be we want you to disseminate this within your organization. You know, this is just a starting point. This is a building block. We're hoping to be able to do more things. We have resources there. We've got tools, and we even have right now a matching program for drivers. And you know, ideally, you connect with your volunteer center and make sure you get those roles created. And if you're virtualizing roles or need help doing that, you can definitely do that. I want to thank everybody, especially our panelists, Javier from Nutmeg, Dalton from Youth Assisting Youth, Cheryl from CICS, Gaia from the Rotary, Mississauga Malton, Ryan from Young People's Theatre, and Amanda from Pledges for Change. And thanks to the United Way for supporting our work at the volunteer centers. Please stay connected to us. We know that there's a lot of, that this is an important topic for us to build upon. So we'll keep that rolling and doing it. As a final thought, you know, there's a lot of good ways to engage youth, and this might be a chance for us to take a moment as a nonprofit sector to go and think about how we can make it better than it ever was before. Yeah, we will eventually get that day will come when we'll be able to resume in-person programming and we'll get back on the soccer field. But until then, we can make a really great plan for how we make our world a little bit better and engage our youth more meaningfully as volunteers.